they're stunning. I mean, it's haunting and stunning and beautiful all at the same time. When you think of the individual lives that it represents.
Yeah, I know it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
At Houston, we had people, the signs, as you remember, were kind of up at the front off the main of the exhibit. And so we would have people walking up from the other end and they would see all of these red X's and they were sort of, they were sort of chuckling in a good way. I mean, not derisively, but they were chuckling, is this a kid's art project? Or they would say, does this have something to do with chromosomes and DNA? And then they would get up and would read the little sign and hands would go over mouths and tears would start flowing. We went through about 5 boxes of tissues at Houston.
Amazing.
Yeah.
How do you, so it's, the project's really interesting, and we had a really nice chat when we were there, because my background is in the culture of catastrophe and understanding how people represent horror and art and culture, sort of their experiences. So I have like a bunch of different questions. How do you see this project? So there are I'm thinking about the AIDS quilt and other quilts out there that are memorial quilts. This is part of that tradition, right, of remembering.
Right.
Do you have thoughts about that? Because usually, are you one of the first projects that's a memorial quilt that people don't know the people? Because like the AIDS quilt usually is people that are commemorating families, right? Or family members.
I think so, or friends, family or friends.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I've not researched that.
That's interesting. It just struck me as these are strangers across time remembering people that have been forgotten, and that seems very powerful.
People that they'll never know.
Yeah.
That's really interesting to think about. I've never really thought about it that way. I do get a lot of stories. You can dedicate your blocks or your quilts when you send them in. And so I get a lot of good stories that way because people realize that one of their friends or one of their loved ones would have received the 2 red X's.
Right.
So they connect to it that way. But no, these are kind, talented, big-hearted, compassionate people who understand that this atrocity happened. It should never have happened. They understand the horror of the thought of it ever happening again, and they don't want these people to be forgotten.
That's really interesting. The other thing is sort of, I think, because it's tied to your sister-in-law as well, is that it remembers the current in the same way and remembering the past. So I find that really interesting too about the project, that having someone that would have been having someone in your life that would have counted as one of the double X's comes to mind immediately. In this day and age, we all know somebody or have someone close in our life that might have received an double X. And I think that's really powerful about this project too. And particularly because you've linked it so specifically with your own personal experiences. It's really interesting too.
Well, thank you. It is, again, I had just never considered. I mean, I know that we're doing now and then. There's a now and then aspect about it, but I never articulated that. Well, thank you for that.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, this is super interesting and super cool. So, the quilt. So, tell me about the process of who's making these X's. How are they getting put together? How are they getting quilted? Where do they go once they get put into something? What's the whole, the logistics of this project?
The logistics are incredible, in a good way, incredible. They're overwhelming, in a good way, overwhelming, because when I am pulling an all-nighter to keep up, and now I could really spend 3 all-nighters every week to keep up, but I think isn't that wonderful, because I'm doing that because there are so many kind, big-hearted, compassionate people in the world. The logistics, the blocks, some people make individual blocks, and the blocks need to be made in one of 3 sizes. The information's on the website. Some people make, like Margaret Andrews' quilt, the one that I referred to a minute ago, make the entire quilt and send me the entire quilt. So some people send me blocks, some people send me quilts. And when I get blocks, I have a check-in process Every block is assigned an ID number. This, of course, tells us how many people we've commemorated. And it also, in the end, well, I should tell you the system first. So the check-in, the system has just changed. Like 2 weeks ago, it changed because I've developed, as you called it, a quilting army. I've developed an army of my own, a small army, but fierce and effective army who's taking over some of my tasks. And so now I check in the blocks, I assign every block a number, then I pass it to the tag team. The tag team actually puts the number on the blocks. Every block is tagged with its block number. And then they pass it to a bundling brigade. The bundling brigade, when we have enough, and we have enough now, they gather at the local library and they will remove the blocks are placed in containers along with their provenance form, which everybody has to send me, giving me permission to use their blocks. And so they pull that out, and then they just, it's like you're collating a book or handout or something. So they go around and around the tables, just one block at a time, making stacks of them. And then once all of the blocks have been sorted into stacks, those stacks become a bundle. That's a bundle. Then every number of block in each bundle, the volunteers sit down in pairs. One person calls out the numbers in a bundle, the block numbers in a bundle. The other writes the numbers down. And then they tally. One counts and one counts the numbers, one counts the blocks to make sure that we haven't missed any blocks. And then those are bundled up and sent to the flight crew. The flight crew then is in touch with volunteers who raise their hands and say, I'll take a bundle and I'll turn them into a quilt. And so the flight crew sends the bundles out into the world to the volunteers who are going to turn them into quilts. And that's the basic system. And then the finished quilts come back to me, where they get photographed and they get logged into the computer. And in the end, on that day when I'm looking for something to do, every quilt's going to have a QR code. And when you scan in the QR code, you'll be whisked to this, all the stories of the fabric and of the blocks and of the makers and of the quilters. And there'll be a database online where you can find your blocks, which quilts they're in, and where in the world the quilts are.
Wow.
So you'll be able to see where in the world you are.
That's amazing.
On any given day.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That is like, big idea gone completely even bigger. That's incredible. Now, I'm looking at the provenance form, which is super interesting. And you're making sure that people, that they've assigned you the rights to the blocks they create. Is that right?
That's right. So I can use them in quilts and send them around the world. I can use the images of their blocks in books and articles and on the web.
Right.
They're just saying, I'm giving this to you. Use it as you will.
Yeah. Right. And you say, right, this is so great. So this is the way every project should be. So from my point of view, because you're having them, you do a right of publicity thing where you say, I give my permission to use my name, likeness, geographic, or other information unless you're anonymous for, blog posts, promotional exhibition materials, audio, video, print media. So that's super great. So they've assigned their right of publicity unless they're anonymous. And then you also have them assign the right title and interest throughout the world, including any copyrights and renewals or extensions thereto in the blocks or contributions as submitted. So they're assigning their copyright in their block to you, and you did it in writing with a signature. You're like, perfect girl. So it's great. So how did you get this form? How did you get this part of the project? How did you figure out to do this part of the project, the provenance form?
I love you even more now because you said, because you like this. And I grew up, this is the way I think, Elizabeth. This is the way I think. And I've been called anal retentive and bossy and a control freak.
Yeah. And those are all the characteristics of a superhero. I just want you to know.
So it is nice to hear good things for a change about the way Jeanne works.
Yeah.
It really is, you do things. And and you realize that everything you've done in your life led you to this point, and is now being put to use, and that's what's happening. So that's really the way I think. And so when the big fat crazy idea came, that was part of it. I got some help with the wording. I should show you my first provenance form that I created all by myself. It was close, but then I had a friend's husband who is a trademark and copyright attorney. He looked at it and threw in made it more legal sounding. But he bless his heart, he did make sure that he kept a little bit of my tone. Because I said, I don't want to scare people away.
Yeah, it's not scary. It's great. And it does exactly what it needs to do, but it's not super scary, and it's got all the words you need. So it's good. And then the other thing you did which is brilliant, is that you had a parent or legal guardian sign it if it's a minor. So that's great too. That's amazing.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, I wanted people of all ages to be involved in this. And, I guess that comes probably from my former teaching days. I don't know. But yeah.
Interesting.
I just want to be able to move forward.
Yeah. Super cool. All right. So how many blocks do you have so far?
I was looking for my notes. Oh, I got it right here because I checked blocks in yesterday. And this is not even public yet. As of today, the last day of December, I have 32,679 commemorations in my hands. And I've got 2 more quilts to check in, so that will go up by midnight.
So you're halfway. You're about halfway.
Almost halfway. And in January, there are 2 cathedrals in the UK, Rochester Cathedral and Durham Cathedral, who asked us to fill them with 70273 quilts for Holocaust Memorial Day, and those are not reflected in this count. And I know that there are over 7,000 commemorations that will be hung in the Rochester Cathedral. Wow. And I don't know about Durham, but I expect it to be a lot too. And then also in the Channel Islands, there is every little area of the Channel Islands made at least 1 quilt. And those are being put on display on January the 7th through the end of January for Holocaust Memorial Day. And this number does not reflect those either. So,
so you're over halfway done. That's really interesting.
Yeah, by the time all of those are counted, by February, by our 2nd anniversary, I launched this on Valentine's Day of 2016, 10 days after I got the big fat crazy idea, but before I had time to think myself out of it.
That's really interesting. And is Holocaust Memorial Day...
by Valentine's Day, we'll be over half.
That's amazing. And is Holocaust Memorial Day an international day? Is it the same day everywhere or different in different places? Do you know?
I don't know. I just know that in the UK, this is a big thing, and it is always the last weekend in January.
Yeah, it looks like it's an I'm looking online, International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and this year it's Saturday, January 27th. So it looks like it is. Well, that's really interesting. Interesting. Well,
I just learned about it.
Yeah, super interesting. Okay, so that's cool. Tell me about some of the groups that have done this, and if there's somebody listening and they want to do this, how do they get their group or their individual person involved?
Oh, good. People come to this all sorts of ways. I've got individuals who are working on making their own blocks and quilts, and I have groups of every kind. I have quilt guilds who are taking most quilt guilds make their own quilt, and then they take bundles and turn other people's blocks into quilts. I have schools. There's a school, Waldegrave School in the UK. And have made, I don't know if that's my profile picture on Facebook right now. And I forget how many, but they've commemorated thousands of people. So entire schools are involved. I have one woman that I met in Houston also who she has a sister with Down syndrome, and she, at the beginning, weekend after Thanksgiving, she took cloth and thread to the facility where her sister resides, and her sister and her sister's friends made middlings, the smaller fat quarter-size quilts. So their churches are making quilts. The churches were the ones who actually brought Action T4 to a public halt. as we know, the murders did not stop, but Action T4 was publicly dissolved thanks to the outrage of churches and congregations and the church leaders. So